So my name is Sarah Howell, and I'm the head of the Global Energy Transition Congress and Exhibition. And I'm delighted to be joined here today by my friend and colleague, Taciana Peão Lopes. She's an energy lawyer from Mozambique, but also a member of the GET Steering Committee. Welcome, Taciana.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah.
Taciana, you came to our first ever GET Congress in Milan earlier this year. Can you tell me what your key takeaways were? What really stood out for you with this first inaugural event?
Well, it was really a big mark in my professional life, and because I work for a long time in energy transition, and I think that my main takeaways were great collaboration between leaders, governments, CEOs, with a great representation from African countries. And I think this was my big takeaway, where also the topics around just and equitable energy transition were really tackled. And there was the beginning of the discussion of how to embrace everyone in this discussion. I think these were my main takeaways.
I think it was really incredible how many Africans did show up and participate at this event and really made it a truly global feeling. And the energy transition, as we know, knows no borders. We have plans for next year, Taciana. We are going to New York City. How can we get the Africa voice heard even more loudly when we go to America?
Well, I think that's the one of the greatest sentences that at least from my experience I heard at GET was the definition of we that was mentioned by the minister from Pakistan. And I think that it's all of us and no one should be left behind. So Africa really needs to be there because it's a great part of this discussion in all aspects, not only in respect to climate change, financing, access to energy, and so African countries have a possibility to really express their needs and also what are the gaps and how the gaps can be met.
As we plan to GET 2025, we are looking to have an Africa pavilion on the exhibition floor. What can Africa bring to this energy transition in a really positive way? What are the really proactive points that they can bring to the table? What are the technologies? What are the business skills that they can bring?
I think Africa has a lot of innovation that it can showcase because of the challenges in terms of, for example, access to energy or access to financing. There are a couple of projects linked to digitalization or universal access to energy in terms of renewable projects that are being implemented in off-grid areas. But also, I think African countries, they have to prepare themselves and also show what they have been doing. For example, projects that they have been deploying, policies that they have been approving, and I can give an example of the Mozambican government approved the energy transition strategy with very concrete points and action points that they can present in terms of, for example, financing gaps or projects that they want to have international partnerships so that they can be able to implement.
A lot of countries are now experiencing new and challenging climates, where it be flooding, fires, droughts. But Africa's always had a bit of a challenging climate. What can Africa tell the rest of the world about how to manage this? Are there some great examples of projects there that have been overcoming climate change and the challenges that we're going to be facing inevitably?
Mozambique is one of the countries that is most affected by climate events. It's also very interesting from a conservation perspective. And if you link climate change with conservation and then with financing, that could also be a point of view for blend financing to, for example, to support some of the infrastructure projects. But also, I think what is important is to see what concrete steps are being taken by African countries to protect conservation areas, for example, and to prevent climate change. In Mozambique, again, I can give an example of what our government did for all projects that have a huge impact in the environment. they have to compensate in terms of biodiversity. So we approved some regulations on biodiversity offsets, that it's an instrument that is quite interesting to compensate this impact on the activities and on climate.
Hey, that sounds fascinating. We need people to come and talk about that at our Global Energy Transition Congress. Why do you believe it's important for African voices to be more prominently represented around the table at events like GET? Why do they need to be there?
Well, I think that there is a big topic that is poverty and energy poverty. Africa continues to be a continent where I think more or less 60% of the population does not have access to energy. This means that the majority of the population still does not have access to electricity or to clean energy, for example, to cook. And they still rely a lot on consumption of biomass, for example, which has also an impact on climate change, destruction of forests. But at the same time, there is a need for the use of our natural resources, for example, our gas resources, and there must be an honest conversation about how these projects are going to be developed, how they are going to be financed. But then I just heard this morning a colleague commenting that there needs to be a clear message about what can be financed, what cannot be financed. And Africa needs to develop their infrastructure, and she needs also to bring these projects, but of course to develop them in a sustainable way. And also show that implementing projects in the ground does not mean that they are all risky projects. So the location of the risk is different, and can be also a place where Africa can explain that implementing a project in Africa, it's not all the time risky. And so it will be a stage where they can present all those gaps and all those challenges. Yeah. And they need to be present.
There's a lot of work to be done on putting out those communications and really explaining the story behind this. So let's make sure we discuss it when we come together next year. How do you envision international partnerships playing a role in Africa's engagement with the energy transition? And how might showcasing what Africa has to offer support opportunities for collaboration and innovation across the continent?
Well, I think that here there is something very important. There is the transfer of know-how, and international partnerships are key. And of course, again, on access to finance, it's clear that we need international partnerships to achieve that, either with multilateral institutions or with commercial banks. I think also on another point, innovation and technology, if we think about companies all over the world are doing in terms of efficiency, energy transition, carbon credits, that it's something that can be brought to Africa, or that African companies can benefit from that. But also, and I give an example in terms of access to financing or mobile money in Africa that is so well developed that the partnership with international companies can actually benefit the universal access to telecommunications, to access to mobile money, and to energy as well.
Okay. And that was something that organisations like the Cherie Blair Foundation were looking at several years ago. So something that has really developed across Africa now, which is incredible.
And also the World Bank, they are investigating this linkage between telecommunications and green infrastructure. So access to energy, access to telecommunications, and of course that will imply access to financing as well.
So Africa is really a breeding ground for some tremendous innovation. We just need to hear about it a bit more, see the fruits of the labours, and see how we can move this forward.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Taciana. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much.